Good morning. Welcome to USJI seminar on US-Japan partnership towards the formation of Asian higher education area focusing on Asia. I'm Katsuichi Uchida, president of this USJI, and also the professor global to ASEAN universities. As you know, USJI is a non-profit research organization in Washington, D.C., established in April 2009. And at present jointly managed by 9 leading Japanese universities, namely Dosha, Keio, Kyoto, Kyushu, Ritsumeikan, Sophia, Tsukuba, University of Tokyo, and Waseda universities. And USJI is financially supported by Japanese Business Society. The mission of USJI are to promote policy-related research at our member universities, to organize research teams, dispatch their research results to a wider communities by the medium of English to nurture young researchers relating US-Japan issues, and to formulate a community of researchers and policymakers. USJI holds week-long seminars twice a year in March and September, and occasional seminars almost every month here in Washington, D.C. Also, we hold symposium in Japan. This week, from Thursday to Tuesday next week, we'll hold 9 different events covering a wide range of topics. This morning, we have 2 concurrent sessions. This relates to higher education, the other relates to economic and political order, both focusing on collaboration between US and Japan in Asia-Pacific region. I'd like to thank all the viewers who come to attend to this seminar. We are very fortunate to have 5 distinguished scholars and 1 moderator, 2 speakers, 2 commentators. Yeah. And I'm quite sure today's discussion will produce fruitful and productive foundation for the further discussion. We are introducing Professor Maeshima and moderator Professor Kitamura. I need to receive a permission of being videotaped, and the videotape will be open to the public through internet or website. I assume no objections. Thank you very much. Let me introduce Professor Maeshima of Sophia University.
Welcome to event 5. Japan-U.S. partnership toward the formation of the Asian higher education area, focusing on Asia. My name is Katsuma Maeshima of the university. I have a privilege to introduce our panel, which consists of 5 distinguished scholars of international education. Immediately, right from me, Dr. Yuto Kitamura from the University of Tokyo, who is going to moderate the whole panel. We have 2 speakers, Dr. Yasushi Hirosato from Sophia University and Miki Sunimura, Vice President for Academic Exchange, Sophia University. Also, we have 2 commentators, Kazuo Kuroda from Waseda University and Jim Williams from George Washington University here in DC. Actually, we have previously scheduled another speaker, whose name is John Hawkins, Professor Emeritus at UCLA. He couldn't make it today because his home is located in Southern California, as you may know, which is very, and now there's wildfire in Southern California, and his home is very close to the fire, so he couldn't make travel arrangement. But he gave his best regards to all our participants today. Well, we have 1 hour 20 minutes for panel discussions and panel presentation discussion among our main participants. After that, we invite discussion from the floor. Well, without further ado, I let my microphone to Yuto.
Thank you very much, Professor Maeshima, and thank you very much for all the participants to joining us this morning. Let me just briefly introduce the purpose of this session. I think many of us aware that Europe has created so-called European higher education area, to try to harmonize their higher education systems and to promote the mobility of students and researchers in the regions, but also across different regions. And today, in this morning, we'd like to introduce you about how the Asia is also trying to create the so-called Asian higher education area, which is sort of the model from the European experiences, and then how the US universities and also Japanese universities can collaborate in this process of promoting the creation of Asian higher education area. Many of issues we take up in this morning maybe not very known in this country because this is happening very far. But it is happening, and then the Asian higher education system is dynamically changing these days. And then I think we have a lot of opportunities, also the challenges. And the US and Japan universities and higher education systems can really collaborate to promote this process, and then we can also contribute to the development of the higher education area. So that's sort of our ultimate goal, to really contribute to this creation of the Asian higher education area. And today we would like to discuss and exchange our ideas how we can collaborate between the US universities and Japanese universities to contribute to such creation. And then actually this panel, these scholars are forming the team of research which has been funded by the Japan Society for the Promotion of Science. This is a government research funding in Japan. And then our research team has been looking at the concept called knowledge diplomacy. And this is quite new it's not really new concept in the international relations. The knowledge diplomacy normally have meant the competition and the contestation among the countries to advance the science and technology. However, the knowledge diplomacy we use in this session and then we try to use today has wider meaning. Not only looking at the competition and the contestation in terms of the advancement of science and technology, but also, covering wide ranges of cultural, human, social issues, which the universities have been involved. So we are actually sort of proposing the new concept, new meanings of the knowledge diplomacy, and then try to discuss this further. And of course, this session will be the beginning. I mean, this concept itself is quite new to our field, the higher education studies. But I hope, we can, based on this new concept, we can build up a very fruitful discussion today. So now I'd like to invite two presentations. First, the Professor Sugimura, and then followed by the presentation by Professor Hirosato. Then I'd like to invite the two commentators, the Professor Kuroda and the Professor Williams. So now I'd like to pass the microphone to the Professor Sugimura. Are you okay? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction. Good morning, everyone. I'm very, very happy and honored to lead my presentation in front of you. Today's my topic is the significance of a higher education network as culture and people-to-people connectivity in East Asia. I've already, Professor Kitamura mentioned, now the company with the European Society, the ASEAN region has a very interesting higher education scheme. And so today's my topic is focusing on the general information about how the higher education area is now organized in this region. After my presentation, Dr. Hirosato will talk about more concrete blooming and the situation on the higher education scheme in Southeast Asian countries. my key point is three, because now we must consider what is the possibility of culture and people-to-people connectivity. This year, the ASEAN Economic Community will be unified at the end of this year, and ASEAN now propose a very interesting motto, people-to-people connectivity. This is include a very wide significances, but how the education can contribute to make this kind of the connectivity among ASEAN people, and not only ASEAN people, ASEAN plus 3 or ASEAN plus 8. And today I just introduced a multi-layered network scheme, because there are several in higher education network in this Southeast Asian countries. And the next my topic is for what to promote people-to-people connectivity, because in this area we have a lot of issues, of the global issues to be shared and to be considered beyond borders. So that means these topics are very interesting to many countries. But of course we must consider some issues when we make the international higher education scheme. Maybe our final purpose of this higher education scheme is to understand mutual cultural differences or identify problems beyond borders, or to live in harmony among diverse cultures with East Asian societies and with our East Asian identity. I'm not sure if it can be formed or not, but anyway, now ASEAN countries quite often discuss these things. And finally, how to promote connectivity, formation of academic platforms through networking or by consideration in some subject of networking. This is the outline of this presentation. In the first one, I just will point out how this higher education scheme is developed in this area. Because, as you know, the internationalization of higher education is very accelerated in the world. And here in Asia, we have a lot of the diversified higher education system with cross-border programs. Of course, many universities or higher education institute is now accelerating their internationalized program. And the privatization of higher education also encourage these trends. As a result, the student mobility, staff mobility, and program mobility, and also institution mobility has appeared. These are pointed out by the Professor Jen Knight of Toronto University. And finally, now some education hub, for example, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, or now, of course, in East Asia, the China and South Korea, and Japan, want to come to the education hub through making formation of network. And these are multi-layered system in this area, because now we have several networks. Southeast Asia aims program by the SEAMEO RIHED, or ASEAN University Network, AUN, has already appeared and very active. And of course, in East Asia, the China, Japan, and South Korea government now promoting the campus Asia. And also even South Asia, third countries, which includes 8 South Asian countries, has already formed the South Asian University, which is situated in the suburb of New Delhi in India. So these 3 higher education zones now is trying to compete each other, but not only competition. Today I want to focus on the collaboration that point. Why they are compete each other, but they also want to collaborate or to cooperate together to make the next generations of this 21st century. Of course, each university or each institutions now operating so many bilateral or the multilateral programs through the transnational or cross-border education. But not only the universities, institutions, government cooperation is very active. As I already introduced you, for example, Campus Asia is one of the very typical highest education scheme. In the MIT programs, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand government formed the very interesting multilateral programs a few years ago. But now this program is handed to the SEAMEO RIHED. And now in this program, ASEAN International Student Mobility Program is going on. And as I already told you, the SARC by the South ASEAN countries and AUN by the ASEAN University Network operated as an inter-regional cooperation. And those regional higher education network seeks for some object. As I already introduced the first page of this presentation, they have common issues to be solved by cooperation among these countries. So now, for example, the ASEAN trying to make the ASEAN study together. They are also trying to make the program which is themed for the ASEAN awareness or knowledge-based society or ICT development and competency. Those point the common issues among the ASEAN countries. And now ASEAN community trying to promote the student mobility, staff mobility, and the institute mobility, and also the collaboration research for ASEAN Way. When they try to promote these schemes, they also try to make the quality assurance system. For example, AUN has a AUN QA system, or the APQA. Now this is not on the screen, but ASEAN Pacific Quality Network, or AQAN, ASEAN Quality Network system also. And there are several quality assurance systems in this area. And now the ASEAN credit transfer system has already appeared. Because when we promote these kinds of cross-border programs, the credit transfer is a very important topic when we harmonize among the institutes and beyond borders. And now the ASEAN countries have already started a new dialogue on the ACPA, which is maybe talked by the Professor Hirosato later. But these schemes are very, very diversified in this area. And these regional higher education network functions are very interesting because they give us opportunities for finding another strategies for economic development and human resource development based on the region. And these countries really suffered from the brain drain program before, but now they changed their policy and they try to focus on the brain circulation and also affected by the regionalization in the world. As Professor Yuto Kitama already mentioned, the European countries has already made a very wonderful student mobility scheme as Erasmus Mundus in Europe. But now these ASEAN countries are also trying to make this kind of scheme through these network. And another functions of this higher education scheme is to provide mobility among students and faculty members over the boundaries and outside the region. And also, the student can get some very, very wide opportunities to learn and discuss regional issues with some other countries' friends. And also, those students, not only students, but the researchers or faculties can share ideas for regional community with people who have different cultures. Anyway, the ASEAN has a very diversified cultures, but they try to create a new academic fields in the subject of international higher education. And connectivity and in context of internationalization, localization must be noted in this presentation. When we focus on this very diversified scheme in the ASEAN region, of course, we can enjoy how we can expect the internationalization is going on. But at the same time, there are several issues of each countries, and this international scheme must consider each country's localization problem. Because now, as I already written in this slide, the internationalization brings us competition to human resource development or making education hub and forming knowledge-based society. And each country has a different national policy, national interest, and national aims for nation building, national integration, and protection of local culture. Quite recently, now some countries in Asia, while they are seeks for the internationalization, they seems to be focused on the nationalized issues. Internationalization gives us a very new possibility on the higher education, but at the same time, each country must keep their own way by the basic education or the national education. So how we can compromise or how we can make a balance between the internationalization and localization, this is one of the points to rise from my presentation. This is a very general chart, how we can compromise these internationalization and nationalization issues. For example, some countries now are trying to attract more English teaching program to attract more international students from the world. But for example, Japan, now we also, our Japanese government asked our university side to teach many subjects in English more, but some teachers are very worried about how we can keep our the Japanese way or how we can keep our the national way. China same. But recently, maybe some of you might already know the Chinese government announced a very new policy. Now many Chinese universities, of course, introduced a many English teaching program, but last February, the Chinese Ministry of Education said, okay, now we don't teach the westernized thoughts of the academic program. We must focus on the more nationalized program. And they also asked each universities, please don't use the English textbooks anymore. This is a very, very quite interesting phenomenon while we are now focused on the internationalized. Because many Chinese universities have already changed their policy to teaching, of course still teaching in Chinese, but they also start to teach in English in many occasions. But now the Chinese government changed their mind. So that's a very interesting example why we must consider about the national context and regional context. So this is one point. And higher education connectivity, but we still must keep our this internationalized scheme, because the roles of higher education is to solve regional and global issues, and we must grow up the next generation who can struggle with these problems and to try to cooperate with another country's people to solve these issues. So that means we still want to have a hope to make a wonderful internationalization scheme for this regional area. Significance of higher education as culture and people connectivity, which might bring young leaders together beyond national boundaries and to think together about cross fields issues together. When we prepare for an academic platform to cooperate together, we might find another possibility. And now Professor Hirosato will talk about those some examples from now on. This is another one. But this is our Sophia University Sophia panel. For example, our university also wants to involve these kind of activities because our university motto is we are the Jesuit university by the Catholic, the same as the Georgetown University here in Washington, D.C. and men, women, for others with others. This motto is very one of the symbol how we, the higher education, try to cooperate more. Now we Sophia are bringing the world together, which means many people, many researchers, and many people come to one place to talk about and discuss about. So today, very happy to come here because this is USJI is one of the very good example how important the platform is to talk connect the people and discuss some points to be solved, not only higher education but also the many issues. So we are very safe to be involved with USJI from this spring. Thank you very much. And now I want to just talk about one more point. Maybe you might have some slide out. Sorry. Today, as Professor Maiji mentioned, John Hawkins cannot come today to this one is the next Professor John Hawkins asked me to give his best regards to you all, and he cannot come today, but now he's really making efforts to make wonderful another academic platform in this area, which is called RIHED, and this Asia Pacific Higher Education Research Partnership. It's very interesting. This is a membership-based organization. It's dedicated to research across major higher education, and which is founded in 2013. So the purpose of this organization is to explore the full range of changes occurring in higher education throughout the region. So if someone who are interested in this kind of activities, and if you could kindly contact Professor John Hawkins in the Research Center of the University of Hawaii, and he's also an instructor, the professor of the UCLA, and his colleagues will be very happy to have your contact. So that's the So thank you very much for everyone, and I'd like to invite you to participate. Thank you very much.
Well, I will talk about the sort of prerequisite or element for the formation of the Asian higher education area, which referred by Professor Kitamura, by explaining this situation of higher education harmonization and networking in ASEAN, and also Greater Mekong Sub-region, GMS, which is part of ASEAN. Why I want to talk about this harmonization networking in ASEAN and GMS, because harmonization is to make higher education in Southeast Asia more comparable and compatible with other regions. And harmonization is an essential infrastructure that can both improve the quality of human resources and facilitate the effective circulation of human resources in the region. And university networking is also a tool to facilitate the harmonization process. But if the gap among universities in ASEAN is too wide, the higher education cannot be harmonized easily. And also university networking cannot be reciprocal and effective. So furthermore, the harmonization and networking involve interactions among key stakeholders who play so-called knowledge diplomacy. And the harmonized higher education and strengthen the network are expected to realize the formation of higher education area. Well, I'd like to start what are the common challenges in ASEAN. As you know, we have three communities in ASEAN. ASEAN Economic Community, AEC, ASEAN Social Cultural Community, ASCC, and ASEAN Political Security Community, APCS. And each community has its own blueprint. And AEC is ahead of other two communities and is about to launch from December 2015. And the biggest challenge perceived by ASEAN itself is to narrow development gap between original member, which is high and middle income ASEAN countries, and relatively new ASEAN member countries like Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam, which is CNMV. And if the disparity is further widened, the ASEAN will be politically, economically, and socially unstable. And especially the challenge deriving from AEC. From December 2015, AEC will be launched, which implies they sort of promote the free flow of goods, service, money, and then skilled labor. And the challenges are about 15-20% skilled labor force from CNMV would leave their home country to seek job abroad, so making the wave of brain drain more serious for CNMV. And increasing competitive pressure for labor market in CNMV as well. Around 5 to 10% labor force in CNMV could come from other middle-income countries, ASEAN and other countries. And that gives the pressure on the labor market in CNMV more severely. But it is a dynamics. The certain level of disparity in terms of the wage is necessary for effective division of labor in an integrated market. So therefore, increasing flow students across borders subsequently stimulate the dynamics of workforce in the region. So that's the implication to AEC, which is free flow of skilled labor. And that's why there is a program called GMS program. And there are also HRD, Human Resource Development dimension in it. And an ASEAN leader took a sub-regional approach in addressing these development gaps by launching this GMS Economic Cooperation Program in 1992 with Asian Development Bank ADB as a coordinator. And this GMS program encompasses CLMV, Thailand, and then People's Republic of China, 2 provinces, Hunan provinces, and one Sichuan autonomous region. And that constitute economic bloc about some 250 million people that have a huge capacity for the potential growth. And GMS program comprises 9 priority sectors, including HRD. And there are actually 2 technical assistance projects by Asian Development Bank. The higher education component in GMS, Human Resource Development Program, is all about addressing human resource gaps, focusing on CLMV through higher education harmonization and networking. And there are 2 phases of technical assistance project already approved, and then phase 2 is ongoing now. There are 3 main activities under these 2 TAs. One is university QA capacity building in Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar, which is internal QA in collaboration with AUN. The second activity is pilot and assess the academic credit transfer system framework for Asia, ECTOFA, which conduct the policy action research on common credit transfer system in 2 phases, which is in cooperation with SEAMEO RIHED. And third activity is the GMS University Networking through GMS University Consortium, which is just launched. SEAMEO RIHED is the Secretariat. So higher education harmonization networking, what does it mean? Which is to create the common space in higher education through harmonization and networking, which make higher education more compatible, comparable, I can say at the beginning. And higher education should seek not only excellence, but also contribute to narrow development gaps, especially human resource gap. And also there is ASEAN way, or ASEAN uniqueness, which is mosaic model, so-called. I think Professor Kuroda can elaborate on this model in Southeast Asia. So meaning there is no single platform in higher education, harmonization networking. So there is multi-layered systems and network. The challenge is how they can coexist. There will be the need for a glue function among different platforms in Southeast Asia. So what are the key mechanisms and the actors in ASEAN? Because they play sort of knowledge in diplomacy. And the ASEAN Summit is the top decision-making body. And that's also ASEAN Education Minister meeting, which is policy making body. And then this ASEAN side, we have ASEAN Secretariat, and then university networking, which is called ASEAN University Network, AUN. This is comprising 30 leading universities in ASEAN. And then this is the SEAMEO side, which is the government side, Southeast Asia Minister of Education Organization, called SEAMEO. And SEAMEO College is like a policy forum for the minister and high official. They're going to discuss the common education and human resource issues in ASEAN. And then for higher education, SEAMEO Regional Center for Higher Education Development, SEAMEO RIHED. That's served as a secretariat for GMS University Consortium, and then also student exchange program called AIMS. And ADB is sort of coordinator for the GMS program, as I mentioned. And what are the principal concepts in harmonization and networking? And there are four concept principles: permeability, neutrality, mobility, and continuity. And I just mentioned from two. So this two is important. We like to focus on these two. Permeability, which should be acceptable standard platform among key stakeholders. Neutrality, cooperation or collaboration to be facilitated by a neutral entity. And mobility should be proactive drive for change, and continuity, regular action to ensure the results. So based on these concept principles, we have two major actors in harmonization networking in Southeast Asia. First one is AUN, ASEAN University Networks. And this one is established in 1992, and now we have 30 leading universities in ASEAN. I don't name all 30s, but you can see like Thailand, Hong Kong, Philippines, University of Philippines, Indonesia is like University of Gajah Mada, so on. And then even Cambodia, we have Royal University of Phnom Penh, Laos, National University of Laos. So they are leading kind of first year elite university. And another one, very important actor is SEAMEO RIHED. And SEAMEO RIHED, they have many programs, but flagship program is called ASEAN International Mobility for Students, AIMS. This SEAMEO RIHED established in 1993 for building capacity of SEAMEO member countries in the policy planning, administration, and management of higher education. The AIMS program now have like 6 countries plus Japan, and then 61 universities are the members already. And this AIMS covers supposedly all the universities in Southeast Asia, but still it has 61. But it's not like elite university groups like AUN. What are the status now? Higher education harmonization, ASEAN. There are two priority area harmonization. One is harmonized QA, and there are actually internal QA system, also external QA system. And then the other one is common credit transfer system. And mainly we talk about ACTS, ASEAN Credit Transfer System, and UCTS, which is University Mobility in Asia Pacific CTS, UMAP CTS. Yeah. And then harmonization of QA, quality assurance system, comprising external and internal QA. And this QA, external QA, SEAMEO RIHED And then AQUAM, which is ASEAN Quality Assurance Network, located in Malaysia Qualification Agency. They are in charge of external QA. And internal QA is really implemented by AUN QA. So this looks like the fine in terms of the division of labor of consulting agency and networks. Coming to credit transfer system, situation is a bit more complicated. And SEAMEO RIHED came up with this framework, ACFA, Academic Credit Transfer Framework for Asia. It's not system, it's called framework. This framework, there are 4 major components: recognition, credit, rate, and information infrastructure. And I'm going to focus on the credit now, because this area is a bit advanced than other 3 components, but they must agree with the credit transfer system. And this is the situation right now on ACFA, how 2 major credit transfer systems can coexist under framework called ACFA. And this actually presented by Professor Kitamura in Jakarta recently. He is the head of the next delegation, and he proposed this kind of way to coexist the 2 major credit transfer systems under ACFA. I don't go for the details, how many hours teaching hour should be allocated, but that's to show how these 2 systems can coexist. AUN, 30-member university, SEAMEO RIHED, mainly they target the AIMS University, which is 6-1 right now, plus 22 member university of GMS University Consortium. So this is how we can visualize they can coexist. And then higher education network. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is a tool to harmonize process more effectively, I suppose. And this is GMS University Consortium. And there are 3 major objectives, but I want to highlight this network to help improve the quality of the university, GMS, by linking with existing and new higher education networks and foreign university. Very importantly, this should complement the AUN comprising 30 leading universities. So this without improving the quality higher education in CLMP, it is not realistic to harmonize higher education in ASEAN. That's why SEAMEO RIHED launched this new university consortium with support by Asian Development Bank, ADB. And we have initial members, 22 public universities along GMS economic corridor and complementing this US. And these are the universities. As you see, most of them, maybe nobody knows. But these are the universities which are located like economic corridor. Most of them like provincial universities. The AUN can never target networking with this kind of university. And initial phase activities. There are some activities initially to confirm the initial member university by signing joint declaration, which was done in July, and to launch a seminar to identify needs, priority, and develop collaborative project, and the mechanism for mutual support, which is also done already in July. And now they have explored the funding in support of activity under GMS. You see, especially ADB TA grant, and the ASEAN Cooperation Fund, Japan-U.S. activity support program, and so on. And they are proposed area of collaboration under GMS UC. So as you see, it's not just for the student exchange, credit transfer. It's more than that, because this is supposed to improve the quality of higher education of these member countries to narrow the gap between these universities in ASEAN, especially with the middle-income ASEAN countries. So what are the implications to US-Japan partnership? I would say US-Japan University can support university GMS country, especially CNUB, through GMS University Consortium, by upgrading their standards to narrow gap with university in East Asia and the middle income ASEAN. They collaborate with AU and SEAMEO RIHED to implement GMS Higher Education Network in Phase 2 in coordination with ADB, and coordination with EU support to higher education in ASEAN region, EU share. This is extension of the European higher education area by this kind of complete program by EU in harmonizing qualification framework, quality assurance, and credit transfer system. And then contribute to formation of higher education area in Asia as a stakeholders in knowledge diplomacy in higher education. And I'd like to just mention there would be some implication to Sofia University as well, in a modest way. So we put up the Sofia ASEAN Hub Center. I'm a past director. I hope not to be last one. And mission to facilitate the process of developing more harmonized higher education by collaborating with key stakeholders such as SEAMEO RIHED, AUN, UNESCO Bangkok, ADB, and of course universities. And help implement GMS Higher Education Networking Phase 2 in collaboration with AUN, SEAMEO RIHED, and in coordination with ADB, the same as American US universities. And explore collaboration with, in particular, George Washington University, other university, US, and SEAMEO RIHED, UNESCO Bangkok. We developed the partnership agreement with UNESCO Bangkok and SEAMEO RIHED. So I hope that based upon those agreements, we could contribute to this process in a modest way. And this is a model of Sofia ASEAN Center, the public-private university partnership model, which is, in terms of concept, should work. But it depends on how we can mobilize resources and our commitment. So I hope like-minded university, Japan, US, can collaborate together to really, formulate the Asian higher education area in the long run. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Sugimura and Professor Hirosata. I think we have had a lot of information and discussion, and I think Professor Sugimura nicely explained the theoretical frameworks, and then Professor Hirosata shared what is actually going on more concretely in Asia, particularly in East Asia, focusing on Southeast Asian countries. And only one point I just like to make is that the very key nature in Asia is diversity. We have such diversity, the elite top universities, but also very popularized universities are now very much establishing, and a large number of universities are now, established in the regions. So we have to tackle with this challenge of dealing with the different types, different conditions, different situations around the universities in the regions. So that's how we are trying to develop different multi-layer networks and framework and networks. Okay, so now I'd like to invite the Professor Kuroda for his comment to the presentations.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude for my Sophia University friends for including me here. I have 5 points for 5 minutes, so I'll have to rush. And then first, how to tackle the diversity of the higher education in Asia, even compared to higher education in Europe, which is also diverse, but Asian higher education is very diverse. As ASEAN integration is a very different process of the European integrations. I mean, ASEAN is a diverse area with different ethnic groups and various languages, and also different levels of economies and many different diversity.
actually has to be tackled actually in the process of ASEAN integrations. Higher education also has to follow, for the same path actually of the integrations. And then one of the, in the last 5-6 years, I think, and more than actually 3 years, I was involved in this discussing with the policymakers and scholars actually of the Asian regional higher education, regionalization higher education. And one thing I found is the conceptual way is the mosaic type of approach may work better than the melting pot approach. Searching for the connectivity among the different systems rather than creating one size fits all type of the establishing single systems in higher education is sought in the Asian higher educations. But the mosaic type of approach, it's of course conceptually we understand in the searching connectivity, but how we can maybe make the system like a mosaic. One, I think that one of the way is the multi-layeredness of the higher education frameworks. As you have already heard actually from the two presentations, there are many different frameworks of higher education collaborations in Asia, in Southeast Asia, various actually frameworks in South Asia also. Only within the Southeast Asia, but the South Asia, Northeast Asia has also the Campus Asia and many others, and then also East Asia or ASEAN Plus 3 or Asia Pacific. There are different really levels of the collaborations of higher education exists in Asia. But this multi-layeredness, I think, really has a big potential to tackle with the diversity of higher education in Asia. But we have to establish applications among the different networks and systems. That's the next thing we have to do for the future. And then the second point is that ASEAN should be always center for the East Asian regionalization of higher education. Several years ago, when late 1990s, actually, when trilateral summit of the China, Korea, and Japan was established, we had a dream actually to have independent collaborations in Northeast Asia, and then we can establish the kind of the sandwich of the two systems, Northeast Asia and Southeast Asia. But because of this diplomatic relations between China and Japan and Korea and Japan, actually really challenged it. I mean, that way of the sandwich system, that we have to follow some other system that oppose hub-spoke system of the, relying on the weaker, not weaker, but the smaller economies of the Southeast Asia for the future East Asian regionalizations. That's for the East Asian regionalization in general, and also in higher education too. So ASEAN is present as great potentials, of course, as I already mentioned, that has already tackled with the diversity of the region, within the regions. And then if China, Korea, Japan can cooperate with the ASEAN and then also establish some common framework actually within these East Asian frameworks, that will be the great foundations actually for future higher education area in East Asia. And then how North America is placed actually for this context of East Asian regionalizations. When I conducted surveys for the 300 leading universities cooperating with the JICA in Asia, cooperating with the JICA Research Institute several years ago, we found that leading universities in Southeast Asia regard the universities in own regions of the Southeast Asia as the most active partners for leading universities in Southeast Asia, followed by, of course, Northeast Asian universities and North American universities, European universities. But in Northeast Asia, still actually many of the universities, leading universities, look at the North American universities as the most cooperative and most active partners. anyway, I mean, for the most of the East Asian leading universities and many, I mean, non-leading maybe universities also, North America's presence and higher education's presence is very big. So we have to really establish some kind of collaborative networks, I mean, or system between the two systems in Asia and America. We may call it this intra-regional frameworks if we believe that we can create one regions, or inter-regional frameworks between North America and East Asia. Asia and Europe actually established the ASEAN process, Asia meeting process, and then that collaborations extended to like USJI now to try to have this inter-regional frameworks between Europe and Asia. In Asia Pacific, we have of course APEC, so that maybe present the intra-regional potentials and opportunities for the collaborations of the North America and Asia, but maybe we can establish the independent frameworks of the inter-regional frameworks in the two regions. So that actually, of course, we have to think about for the future. And then fourth point is that quality assurance and credit transfer. I mean, we repeatedly heard about this today. Are the very functional directions to promote student mobility and then for the collaborations of the East Asian higher education. However, as Professor Sugimura said, I mean, for what is very important, I think we need to really set the overall goals of the higher education collaborations in East Asia for peace, mutual understanding, or sustainable development. I think we have to really have a conceptual directions and goals, I mean, for our collaborations for the future. And then also, another conceptual framework we used to rely on is dependency theory. For example, I mean, presented by a very famous and eminent comparative educationist, Professor Altbach, which illustrates Asian higher education and Western higher education as a core, periphery and core. And of course, I mean, in the past, I think that kind of relationship between the two systems of Western and Asia higher education existed. But I think now, with this very fast emerging Asian higher education situations, I mean, we have to really create another model. And then I presented one time as a flying geese model of higher education in East Asia. I think, I mean, which means flying, like a flying geese actually, all the Asian universities fly together to the world. So that kind of, how can we establish that kind of flying geese frameworks and then development process of the higher education collaborations? That's another challenge for us. And final point, which is not really about actually these regionalizations, but about Professor Hirosato's actually presentations about the new initiative of Sophia University to establish the center in Bangkok. I was very, very impressed actually by this great idea. There's a kind of boom for many Asian universities or Japanese universities to set up the branch offices abroad these days, and then growing number of these branch offices are now set in many in Asia and also, of course, in the United States. But unfortunately, many of them fail to have a real meaning of their activities. At Sophia University, I think this kind of initiative to have having a clear idea is a really good model, I think, for Osaka University as well. And also, I think I consider USJI is also, this is a kind of branch office of 9 universities, Japanese leading universities, and then having a real idea and then goal, and then that kind of type of collaborations of the universities in the different parts of the world, I mean, should be more established. So, thank you very much.
All right. Now let's invite Professor Williams for giving your comment.
Okay. Chairs. Good morning, everyone. I was frantically taking notes because Professor Kuroda set the example of 5 points, and I had 24. And I thought I should probably cut back to allow a little bit of time for discussion. My name is James Williams. I'm at George Washington University. I'm delighted to see a lot of GW students. Nice of you to come. I'd like to first of all thank the organizers at USJI and the collaborating universities, academic leaders of these universities. It's an honor to have this opportunity to share a few thoughts with you, students and other interested parties. It's a very exciting time. Being my idea of American, at least I had to start with a joke. But I do think that my thoughts were quite somber this morning with the anniversary, of course, of a major event in U.S. history. But thinking about this kind of, picking up on the notion of knowledge diplomacy as an alternative to other forms of international relation, and this is a very good way to go. Knowledge diplomacy beats gun diplomacy. It beats lack of diplomacy. It seems a very useful thing. And I suppose diplomacy is often conceived of as a bilateral thing, but I think surely we can think of this kind of thing as a multilateral knowledge diplomacy. And so talking about relationships among countries in Southeast Asia, among countries in Northeast Asia, between countries in Northeast and Southeast Asia, and with North America and others, and with Europe, of course. And so I hope we can see it in that context. Paul Collier, as I said, my thoughts were somber this morning, but Paul Collier talked about war as development in reverse. And perhaps if we think of development as war in reverse, that's a good thing to think about. I hope we can. Development and perhaps cooperation in development as war in reverse. We were lucky last year, a little bit of advertisement, I suppose, to be honored to be named UNESCO chair in international education for development, and so we're working to enact that, and I cannot think of a better way to work on that than to begin conversations about how we can join this very interesting and important set of activities working to foster collaboration among universities, development of institutional capacity, elimination of disparities, development of knowledge, understanding of other cultures, etc. Let's see. Asia, East Asia is the most dynamic economic region in the world. It's a very exciting place to be, and also one that has a lot going on diplomatically. So trying to fit into that. Europe has beat us a bit to the draw. Europe has experience in working in the Bologna process. Europe has a lot of experience trying to develop collaboration among universities and to harmonize higher education systems. The U.S., of course, has always had a somewhat harmonious relationship among universities, being one country, I suppose. But Europe is actively involved, and the U.S., it's time for the U.S. to get involved in that. The U.S., what can the U.S. offer? I was trying to think. Europe offers its experience with Bologna, with working across a very diverse set of institutions, nationalities, and requirements and such. The U.S., I think, could offer three things. One would be, of course, a vibrant higher education sector. We have a lot going on. We have a good higher education system in many ways, at least that's what people say. And so we can offer that. We can offer a slightly different model of governance and development. In contrast to many systems of the world, the U.S. higher education system developed, in a sense, prior to government or prior to national direction establishment of the universities. And so I remember I for reasons that are unclear to me, I was able to complete doctoral study at Harvard University. And when I was there, I remember talking with some people at the Harvard Institute for International Development where I was working, and they were negotiating an arrangement with USAID. And USAID at that point, I shouldn't tell you these things, but USAID at that point wanted to edit a document that a Harvard professor had written. And Harvard said, absolutely not. We don't care about the money, we'll take it. And the person said to me, after all, Harvard's been around 200 years longer than US government. We expect US government to continue, but we, after all, have been here much longer. I'm not sure if that's really relevant to this discussion, but I think the point is that US university higher education system is largely developed independently of government with quality assurance mechanisms that are different and also quite effective in their way, with credit transfer systems that work pretty well, with a highly differentiated system of higher education that meets the needs of a very diverse population. And those are all lessons, I think, that can be brought in some way. Lessons, I don't know, that lessons is too strong, as if we're teaching. We're not teaching, but they are examples of alternate and interesting ways to bring about quality assurance, to work toward credit transfer, to work toward institutional development, and development of a diverse system. The problem is when you have a unitary system of evaluation, somebody's better than somebody else. But if you're working toward a multi-layered system, you need institutions that serve different purposes, and to try to avoid the natural tendency to say this one is better than this one. They need to be different, and that's a challenge to bring up. At any rate, challenges to doing this. Obviously, there are the concrete mechanisms that need to be developed. I had hoped to have the concrete mechanisms finished by the time I was talking to you, but I don't. I think there are things that we need to begin working on and thinking about how to develop those. George Washington, my own institution, would be delighted to work on this under the leadership of Sophia and other institutions in collaboration with USJI, perhaps working with other UCLA, which has shown leadership in this area. Colleagues at the University of Minnesota seem like good partners. We can work on that. Perhaps the Washington Consortium of universities, 13 universities in this city that work together. Mechanisms, though, will be a challenge. Professor Kuroda talked about geese flying in formation, and that is a good thing for universities to do. Sometimes we're more like cats flying in formation, going in our different directions. So how to keep us going. Professor Sugimura talked about the importance of attending to the local and the collaborative. And that's a challenge between institutions as well as between countries. And so how to develop one's own capacity while working collaboratively with others. And if it's done right, developing one's own capacity can be done by collaborating with others. But it's a challenge to work that out. The gap between universities and countries, as all of the speakers have talked about, is great. And one of our core missions, one of the most exciting dimensions of the Sustainable Development Goals, which the UN will be voting on next week, is it? Soon. One of the most exciting things is the emphasis given on eliminating disparities. And ASEAN has taken that on as one of its core challenges. Its threats to survival are the great differences in economic development and institutional development. And so trying to work to do that. I think I'm on point 22. I should stop, shouldn't I? The resources, of course, finding resources to do this. Being non-government led, we have to find resources to work on these issues and that's always a challenge. And approaches, how Professor Kuroda talked about trying to develop a mosaic approach, and perhaps that's close to this highly differentiated system, but thinking about how to develop, it's very dangerous for countries to throw all of their effort into developing world-class universities to the exclusion of others. At the same time, it's probably very dangerous to develop only one's local universities. And so thinking about those balances and helping countries think about that. One of the first projects I worked on internationally was a regional effort in Southern Africa to develop expertise in 8 frontline states to South Africa. And the idea was it was a time of famine, and so agricultural expertise was needed. And rather than Zimbabwe developing highly technical PhDs in forestry and animal science, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, why not develop regional centers of excellence? It worked to some extent, but it's a challenge. Thank you for allowing me to share a few thoughts, and let's work together and try to bring this about.
Thank you very much, Professor Claude and Professor Williams, for very inspiring comments. Now, I think we have about 15 minutes left. So I'd like to open the floor for you to raise a comment or questions. So, I'd like to make this very interactive. So, please, the gentleman.
Hi. I can speak a lot. I'm Tyler Giebler. I was currently a master's student at George Washington in International Affairs and Development. And I did my undergraduate at the University of Minnesota, which is one of the schools that Professor Williams mentioned. And my international education professor there, David Chapman, he's done work in Southeast Asia. And he talks about and does research on, he's less focused on first-tier universities, but second-tier universities and the development of their research capacity. And so I was curious what you think the potential is, or maybe the current status, in your opinion, asking the panel, of the second-tier universities joining ASEAN +3 or AUN, and kind of how you see the potential for not only research collaboration within those groups and the development of research capacity at not only Tier 1 but Tier 2 universities, and then maybe also if you want to comment on how your own backgrounds with U.S. PhDs or by collaborating with U.S. American universities to help develop some of that interrelationship research capacity development. I'm just curious about your thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a very important point you raised. Let me collect few more and then ask them to respond, please.
My name is Kama Yapek. I'm from Eastern Europe, Romania, where I studied Japanese English at university. I got my master program in human developmental sciences at Japan-U.S. University in Japan. And here in US, I'm trying to get into a master program, or I'm trying to teach Japanese. And I often get this sentence that I'm not qualified or my university is not equivalent, and I'm just wondering, how do you see the future of higher education and being able to work or to teach wherever in the world at some point using a master program you got in Japan or a PhD program you got in the US, since now it seems possible for me to do it only in Europe, as in, because of collaboration going on.
Okay, thank you. This has been a debate about qualification frameworks and so on. So this is also another important topic. Thank you. Please.
Actually, I have 2 questions for Professor Sensei and Professor Clemens. And thank you for the questions. The thing is that the idea of regionalization for higher education is very good and easy, but somehow compared to Europe and Asia, especially Southeast Asia, they have so much cultural diversity. and your diversity, right? So somehow like having cultural diversity is really good or like okay, but somehow it's challenge to formulate the cooperation, especially for higher education and regionalization. So how can you find the cultural diversity can actually have effect on these kind of higher education regionalizations? And the second one is for complementary. That concerning like Asian countries, they have kind of not that much independent from the government's policies, right? So how these days I just found that somehow China, Japan, Korea, I'm not sure Korea, but actually the government policy is more like localized. It's getting localized. That's why and then from the other voices from my friends, actually Indian students study in Japan and China as well. So this kind of localized education policy actually effect on the higher education policies there, or could effect on students for work as well.
Thank you. Very, very interesting 2 points. Anyone else? Yes, please.
I have a question on the purpose of studying abroad, especially in Japan. And the context is that I think you all mentioned about cultural and linguistic issues. Like if you go abroad and study in Japan, you can probably acquire Japanese and learn Japanese culture. But nowadays, the internet is really well developed, and people can acquire information from on the net. So I would like to ask you if there's a major change in the purpose of studying abroad nowadays, and your opinions on that.
Thank you. That's also interesting. Anybody would like to highlight something about like U.S.-Japan relations? If not, I'd like to invite the presenters to respond to some of these questions. We now got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 topics. Anybody would like to start to respond?
Thank you very much for all good questions and comments. Actually, I'd like to just make some response on the cultural diversity and how the ASEAN University can cooperate together. As already you mentioned, yes, we have a lot of diversity in this area, but the cultural diversity seems to be, I think, it's not so big program when we collaborate this kind of program, because we must give each cultures or each nation's good point to try to combine together to make a better program. For example, AON or the AIMS program, they try to make the new program. Most of them seems to be focused on the multidisciplinary approach, and each different the ASEAN countries not so big, but they can cooperate. And once they can cooperate together, so they can help each other and cooperate each other to bring the better program beyond the capacity. So that's why I think the cultural diversity must be a very good point when they try to make the better program beyond the national education. But more difficult point might be, as I already mentioned, maybe the political diversity, I think, because there are a lot of the political system in the Asia, and each country has a different national interest and national policy. So this point might be related with a qualification framework. Now Professor Kitamura and Professor Hirosato mentioned the ASEAN countries trying to make the formation on the more integrated ACPA issues, but still we have a lot of discussion how we can compromise each country's national interest. So when we consider that point, it might be very important to consider the political diversity. It should be very important when we make this kind of regional framework. This is my response. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anybody would like to respond to the question? First.
But I just like to take a question regarding research capacity. Actually, there are country level activities, country level, especially for the CNLP, the Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam, where the research capacity is extremely low. I think you cannot really imagine how their capacity is weak. And so the country level activities like, like programs and projects by external funding agencies ongoing. And so that's the country level. At the regional level, only I think notable one example, as I know, is the so-called AUN SEAMEO project. It is supported by JICA, Japan International Cooperation Agencies. And that's they're using this regional sort of networking approach to develop this research capacity, including that countries like CLP. But then question is, as Jim mentioned, how we balance. Because on one hand, we need a center of excellence. Actually, I mentioned about the challenge in ASEAN is just to, address the disparity. But middle-income countries also struggling to getting out of so-called middle-income trap. So we really need to balance. And then I think both country level activities and the region network should really complement each other to develop research capacity, especially for those low-income countries. But at the same time, we should be aware, how these ASEAN middle-income country get out of this trap. So it's balancing also, I think, concern. I'm not sure I can really respond myself, but that's my thought.
Thank you. Professor Kuroda.
But there are always tensions between policy dimensions. I mean, for the domestic dimensions of the policies and the international dimensions of the policies. But I see clear trend of the transformations of the policy discussions from the domestic to international, and as many issues are started to cross borders. So that's why we are seeing, observing the growing number of the regional and global frameworks, and also the governance frameworks actually across borders. Like Jim Sensei mentioned, this SDGs is one of them, and then also today's discussion of regionalization, regional frameworks are also another examples. So of course, there are some back and forth, of course, trends, but I think that trend is very significant and steady, even in the field of higher education. Also, one short comment on the diversity. Yes, diversity is a challenge, but the diversity is also a great opportunity. I mean, I think that's why the Asian, in the Europe, of course, there's something common and shared. So in historically and culturally, that's why they came up with this idea of the regionalizations. But in Asia, historically and traditionally, we don't. Maybe sometimes we see many differences. But that's the origin and that's the identity of Asia. I think we have to really start, actually, I think, to not really tackling with the diversity, but embracing diversity. And then we have to have another version of the regionalizations in Asia. That's what I think sense, I think, for future trends and future directions of the regionalization and innovation.
I suppose I should say something. I was going to comment on the last question, actually, just a brief note about that. Of course, one gets information from studying abroad, but surely one gets a whole lot more than that. I think the intercultural dimension is quite significant. Most of the world really, well, unless with the possible exception of China, but most of the world acts differently than people do in one's own country. For almost everybody. Certainly in the case of the U.S., most of the world just really isn't American and don't think that way. Most of the world is not Japanese and they don't think that way. And so it's useful really to understand how the rest of the world sees things. So there's the intercultural dimension. I think that's really critical. And certainly you can get information from the internet, but you don't get that experience of being in a place where people understand things very differently. So I think that's one critical dimension that's important. And one of the functions, surely, of education. Ancient report, the Delors report, talks beautifully about the 4 functions, and one of them being learning to live together. So that's an important dimension. But there's also the learning to do, and learning to the knowledge dimension, which is really enhanced by international study as well. So, but the cultural dimension is one that I would highlight that you can't get from the internet.
Any panelists, anybody would like to make a very last comment? Or yes, please.
Thank you very much for giving a lot of time. So now, this is USJI. Now, one of these consortium's purpose is how we can propose our policy recommendation or something. And in that case, if we can continue to discuss this kind of the higher education network, maybe we might focus on how we can exchange our opinion through some channels between the US or the ASEAN countries. That is, I want to propose this point. That means if we can propose, for example, some kind of research cluster or the data cluster to share among the nation's information, I think it might be very good. Now the SEAMEO RIHED try to make the research cluster, and they want to share the information or data of each country's higher education development. So if between the US and Japan and some ASEAN countries, if we can make a kind of the data platform, it might be very interesting when we consider how we can find the issues or challenging point or the possibilities of making this kind of platform. This is one of I want to say to propose this wonderful occasion. So thank you very much for giving a wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for very forward-looking comment made by Professor Sugimura to propose us to think much further by utilizing this initiative, the USJI. And I have nothing to add, but just like to highlight two things. I mean, we really have a diversity in Asia, and then diversity is really the key one. And I hope we can share our diversities with our American colleagues through the initiatives promoted by USJI. That's one thing I really would like to highlight. And another point, I think the Japanese universities, particular faculties, we really enjoy and appreciate academic freedom and autonomy of the universities, which is very, very rare in the context of Asia. Many Asian countries do struggle to establish such. And we really learned this from the American experiences. Of course, we also learned from European experiences, but we really learned this from American experiences. And then that's why the Japan and Japanese universities, Japanese scholars, we have roles to play along with American colleagues to contribute to the development of the harmonization in creation of the Asian higher education area. So that's the last statement I'd like to make. So, and I think we won't have more time, but because there are so many things to discuss, but this is just the beginning, as I mentioned earlier. So I hope we can continue our discussion and exchange our ideas. So lastly, please join me to congratulate the wonderful and inspiring discussions made by presenters and panelists. Thank you very much.
Now we conclude our session. Thank you very much for your participation.